For countless ages, the galactic empires spread outward, seizing world after world, folding entire species into their dominion. Yet there exists a firm boundary, an unseen barrier where every chart abruptly ends: human space. None dare to cross it. None dare to ask why. The galaxy's brightest scholars murmur about it, but fear seals their tongues. The Cathari, proud and ancient beyond measure, had charted thousands of systems, their empire stretching wider than any rival. Still, upon reaching human territory, their grand expeditions simply ceased. No survivors returned. No distress calls, no dying transmissions, no drifting wrecks, only silence. The Galactic Council, an alliance of the most dominant civilizations in existence, endlessly debated the human enigma. They were an anomaly, a people who carved their path to the stars through war, carnage, and a reckless willpower unmatched. Unlike the other civilizations that advanced through patience or diplomacy, humans spread like wildfire, ferocious, erratic, unstoppable. And then, just as abruptly as they had surged forth, they halted. Their fleets no longer roamed. Their colonies ceased to grow past a chosen boundary. No conflicts, no treaties, no further movement. A line was carved in the stars, and none dared cross it. Yet someone had to question why. Ambassador Corinva of the Zixari Dominion had devoted his life to unraveling humanity's mystery. They were captivating, frail yet fearsome, fragile yet impossible to conquer. He had sifted through the reports, absorbed the accounts, and felt the dread that haunted the council whenever Earth arose in discussion. And now the chance was his. A human delegation had offered an invitation, the first in more than a century. A lone vessel was permitted entry into their domain, to stand upon one of their core worlds. It was a privilege, a chance, and a caution. Corin understood the danger. Everyone did. No being who crossed into human space had ever returned. Yet the question gnawed within him. He needed to know why. So he agreed. As his ship breached the unseen border, silence consumed his crew. The stars ahead seemed dimmer, the void itself heavier. Monitors flickered, registering anomalies. The vast nothingness that once Cephal charted now appeared unknowable. And then the human spoke. "Welcome to our space, Ambassador Vesh. We trust your stay will be pleasant." Their voices carried no tremor, far too composed. Corin had built his life upon the belief that the cosmos obeyed laws. Yet deep inside, he realized, the humans had discovered something out here, something no other race possessed. And whatever it was, they had ensured no one else would ever uncover it. The human escort ship led Corin's vessel onward, deeper into the void. Unlike the colossal warships of the Galactic Council, this craft was sleek, understated, yet it unsettled him. It moved with uncanny precision, as if alive. Every shift was too fluid, too exact. Corin had witnessed warships, freighters, and grand diplomatic cruisers, but this was different. His crew stayed silent, their eyes fixed on the dark horizon through the panels. Attention weighed upon them all. The sensors still faltered, unable to clearly register what surrounded them. It was as if the very fabric of space bent here, unreadable. Then the human voice returned. "We are approaching Sol. Prepare for descent." Spoken in perfect galactic standard, yet the words carried a chill, detached and mechanical. Corin had met humans before, traders, envoys, figures who radiated bold confidence. But this was not the same. The screen came alive, and for the first time Corin saw Earth. Unlike any homeworld he had encountered, it defied comparison. Other species nurtured balance, carefully guarding their worlds. Earth was contradiction. Colossal megastructures pierced the clouds, yet sprawling wilderness thrived untouched, as if humanity refused to sever itself from its origins. The world pulsed with life, not merely with cities, but with something older, something primal. As their ship pierced the atmosphere, Corin felt it instantly, a pressure, A weight coiling around his thoughts. It wasn't physical, but something beyond comprehension. His gaze swept to his crew, and he saw the same unease mirrored in their eyes. "Something is wrong," one whispered. The craft touched down upon a landing platform, its doors sliding open. Humans stood in formation, their expressions impossible to read. Unlike other species, who cloaked themselves in jewels or ornate attire, these humans wore stark functional uniforms. At their head stood a woman with steely gray eyes. She stepped forward. "Ambassador Vesh," she said. "Welcome to Earth." Korin studied her face, searching for deception, for even a flicker of weakness. He found none. No fear, no vanity, only certainty. They knew something. Something hidden from the rest of the galaxy. And he was about to uncover why. Korin descended the ramp, senses consumed by the sheer gravity of Earth. The air was heavy, thick with alien fragrances, industrial metal, and something unidentifiable. The woman's gaze never wavered, her eyes sharp as blades. "I am Director Helena Graves," she said. "You must be weary from your voyage." Her voice was calm, courteous, yet a chamber vast and silent. The air carried weight, as though the space itself held its breath. Her words lingered in Korin's mind. Final, unquestionable. Not threat, not offer, simply fact. "My crew," he began, but Helena raised a hand. "They will be cared for," she replied. "Your presence was requested alone." His jaw tightened. This was wrong. Every negotiation he had ever attended included escorts, guards, advisors. But humans did not follow patterns, they bent them. He looked back once, catching the unease etched into his crew's faces, before nodding them into silence. The ship sealed behind him, leaving only the woman and the waiting transport. A black vehicle, unmarked, sleek, without crest or insignia. Helena gestured. Korin hesitated a fraction, then entered. Inside, darkness, silence, no scenery. No idle words. He forced calm, though unease gnawed at him. He had stood before tyrants, before emperors who commanded worlds. Yet beside this human, in this nameless machine, dread crept in like frost. At last, the vehicle halted. The doors parted, revealing not a palace or council chamber, but a cavernous facility below ground. Its design was unsettling. Smooth surfaces, no seams, no wasted decoration, only perfect cold efficiency. "This way," Helena said. They moved through sterile corridors, doors marked only by numbers, no glyphs, no guides. The air chilled as they descended further. Then they stopped. Before them loomed a door greater than the rest, its mass alive with power. Helena placed her palm to the panel. The door split open. Darkness within, and a window vast enough to swallow him whole, staring into something below, shrouded in shadows. Korin stepped closer, peering through the glass. Then the lights flickered on, and he saw it. His breath caught in his throat. His mind recoiled, struggling to comprehend what lay beneath. It was alive, it was enormous, and it was waiting. Korin turned to Helena, his voice barely a whisper. "What is that?" She met his gaze unflinching. "That," she said, "is why no one crosses into human space." Korin's breath came in short, shallow bursts. His twin hearts pounded against his ribs as he stared through the reinforced glass, struggling to process what he was seeing. The chamber bellow stretched impossibly far into the darkness, its depths illuminated only by the cold glow of hidden lights. Embedded in the walls, and at the very center of it all was something. The creature, if it could even be called that, was vast beyond comprehension. Its form shifting and undulating, as if it were not entirely bound by the rules of this universe. It had no defined shape, no clear anatomy, yet his mind insisted on trying to impose logic onto it. One moment it seemed like an amorphous of writhing tendrils. The next it hinted at something vaguely humanoid, its elongated limbs twitching in slow, deliberate motions. But the worst part, the part that made his stomach churn, was the feeling of awareness. It was looking at him, not with eyes. There were no eyes, but Corin could feel its attention settle on him, seeping into his very being like an oil slick spreading through water. His instinct screamed at him to run, to flee, to put as much distance as possible between himself and the entity imprisoned below. But his body wouldn't move. What? What is that? He managed to rasp, forcing the words past dry lips. Helena Greva stood beside him, arms folded behind her back, her expression unreadable. She watched Corin, studying his reaction more than the thing below. "This is what we found," she said quietly. "Or more accurately, what found us." Corin tore his gaze away from that creature and turned to her, desperate for an explanation. "You captured it," he demanded. "You how?" Helena let out a slow breath. "No, Ambassador, we didn't capture it. We contained it." Corin's mind reeled. Containment was a dangerous word. It implied something too dangerous to be let loose, something powerful enough to require constant vigilance. He had encountered species that dabbled in such things, creatures from the fringes of the known universe that needed entire planets to serve as prisons. But this was different. This wasn't a being they had found on some distant world. This was something humans had encountered within their own space, and they had locked it away. His fingers curled against the railing as he tried to keep his voice steady. Where did it come from? Helena didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned back toward the glass, watching the entity below. Its shifting form pulsed, reacting to their presence. "We don't know," she admitted. "We only know that they exist, and that we are not meant to see them." A chill ran down Corin's spine. He swallowed hard. "How many?" Helena finally looked at him, her gray eyes sharp. "Nod. We don't stop others from crossing into human space because of secrecy or power," she said. "We do it because we're containing something. And if the rest of the galaxy starts poking around where it shouldn't, we can't guarantee that containment. We'll hold." The meaning of her words sank into him like ice. The humans weren't isolationists. They weren't hoarding secrets for themselves. They were standing at the edge of something terrible, holding the line. And if that line broke, Corin felt Hishin shaking. He wanted to argue, to demand answers, to insist that the Galactic Council had a right to know the full truth. But deep in his soul, he understood. Some truths were better left buried. Some doors were never meant to be opened. And the humans, reckless and terrifying as they were, had learned that lesson the hard way. Corin exhaled slowly and stepped away from the glass. "Take me back to my ship." Helena nodded once. No argument, no further discussion, just quiet understanding. As they walked away from the observation deck, Corin forced himself not to look back. Not to glance one last time at the shifting, impossible thing in the chamber below. But as Theodore slid shut behind him, he heard it. A whisper, a voice not meant for mortal ears. "We see you." Corin did not speak for the rest of the journey because for the first time in his life, he truly understood fear. The journey back to his ship was suffocating. Corin sat in silence, his mind spinning with the weight of what he had just witnessed. The transport moved with the same eerie precision, gliding through the underground corridors without a single jolt or hesitation. Every second that passed, the whisper echoed in his mind. "We see you." The words had no source, no mouth to speak them, and yet he had heard them as clearly as if they had been spoken into his ear. He clenched his fists, forcing himself to focus. He was a diplomat, an ambassador. He had dealt with the most cunning, manipulative beings in the galaxy. He had stood before warlords, debated with rulers who held the fates of entire worlds in their hands. And yet, nothing had prepared him for this. Across from him, Helena Graves sat with her usual composure, arms folded, gaze fixed ahead. She had not spoken since they left the chamber. She didn't need to. Finally, Corin found his voice. It was quieter than I intended. You've known about them for a long time. Helena nodded. Longer than you'd believe. Corin exhaled sharply. And you've kept it from the rest of the galaxy all this time. A small humorless smile flickered across her lips. Would you have done any different? He wanted to say yes. He wanted to insist that the Galactic Council had a right to know that every species in the universe should be united against a threat of this magnitude. But the words died before they could leave. Hismuth. Number. He wouldn't have done any different because this wasn't a war. This wasn't an enemy that could be fought with fleets and weapons. It was something else, something older, something beyond. The comprehension of any species that still believed itself in control of the universe. How many have seen it? He asked. Helena's expression darkened. Few. Fewer still will leave with their sanity intact. A shiver ran down his spine. You will return to your people, she continued. You will tell them that humanity refuses to open its borders, that we will not negotiate our stance, and if they push further. She turned her head, meeting his gaze. For the first time, Corinne saw something in her eyes. Not fear, resolve. If they push further, she said, we won't stop them, but we won't be responsible for what happens next. A heavy silence settled between them. Corin let out a slow breath, his mind working through the implications. If he told the council the truth, they would demand evidence. They would send scouts, then research teams, then warships. They would probe the depths of human space, believing themselves prepared for what they might find. But they weren't prepared, not for this. The transport came to a halt. The doors slid open, revealing the landing platform. His ship sat where he had left it, his crew waiting anxiously at the base of their ramp. They stiffened as he stepped out, their eyes flickering between him and the human escorts. He turned to Helena one last time. You're not telling me everything. Her lips pressed into a thin line. No, she admitted, I'm not. He considered pressing further, demanding to know the rest, but in the end he didn't. Some knowledge wasn't meant to be gained. Without another word, he strode toward his ship. His crew followed him without question, sensing the weight of his silence. The doors sealed behind them, and Corin moved straight to the command deck. Prepare for immediate departure, he ordered. The ship's engines roared to life. As they ascended, leaving Earth behind, Corin took one final glance at the blue planet shrinking below them. It was not an empire, not a war-hungry domain seeking to expand its reach. It was a wall, a thin, fragile wall between the known universe and something no one should ever see. And for the first time, Corinne prayed it would hold. Because if it didn't, nothing would. As the ship broke free from Earth's gravity, Corin remained at the viewport, watching as the blue planet faded into the darkness of space. His twin hearts still thundered in his chest, his mind racing throughout everything he had witnessed. His crew remained silent behind him, sensing the weight in his stance, the stiffness in his posture. The view of Earth should have been comforting. Just another inhabited world, one of many across the stars. But no, it felt different. It was a prison. And for the first time in his life, Corin feared what lay inside. Ambassador, the voice of Hissekund in command, Commander Viek, cut through the silence. Are we clear to depart? Corin nodded, forcing his voice to remain steady. Set course for the council station. No delays. Felix hesitated. No delays. He cast a quick glance at the planet behind them. Are we not filing a report with the humans before departure? No, Corin said quickly. We leave now. There was a pause, and then Vala gave a small nod before turning to relay the orders. The crew, though confused, complied without question. The hum of the ship's engines intensified as they powered up for faster-than-light travel. Corin took his seat at the command console, his hands gripping the armrest tighter than necessary. His mind kept replaying the final words Helena Graves had spoken to him. We won't stop them, but we won't be responsible for what happens next." It wasn't a warning. It was a promise. The ship lurched forward, star-streaking past the viewport as they accelerated into the void. Yet, no matter how far they traveled, Karan could still feel it, the weight of unseen eyes. The journey back to the Galactic Council station was uneventful. But Karan found no relief in that. Every moment of silence, every stretch of empty space felt heavier than before. He spent hours reviewing his diplomatic notes, rewriting his report over and over again, trying to decide how much to tell the council, and more importantly, how much to leave out. When they finally arrived, the station loomed ahead, a massive structure. Floating on the edge of neutral space, its design a blend of a dozen different species. It was a place of politics, of negotiations, off-measured words and calculated alliances. It felt Smalno. As a ship docked, Karan straightened his uniform, drawing a deep breath. He needed to be careful. One wrong sentence, one misplaced warning, and the council would push for deeper investigation. And that could not happen. The airlock hissed open, and he was greeted by an escort of officials. They were waiting for him. Word had already spread that he had met with the humans. A formal meeting was scheduled within the hour. Karan didn't have to prepare further. As he was led through the pristine halls of the council chambers, he kept his expression unreadable, his mind carefully constructing his words. When the great doors to the assembly opened, dozens of representatives from across the galaxy turned to face him, waiting to hear his report. He took his place at the center of the room, standing tall despite the weight pressing on his shoulders. "The negotiations with humanity have concluded," Karan began, his voice steady, "and their stance remains unchanged. They will not expand, they will not open their borders, and they will not discuss the reasons behind their isolation." Murmurs rippled through that chamber. He could already see the dissatisfaction among the more aggressive factions. They would want to press further. They would demand answers. Karan inhaled slowly. Now waste moment of decision. Tell the truth and risk everything, or lie and pray the galaxy. Never learned what lurked beyond the edge of human space. He exhaled, his voice calm, practiced, controlled. Humanity has chosen their path, and to strongly advise the council to respect it. Silence. Then the voices rose. Some agreed, others protested. Questions were thrown at him from every direction, but Karan stood firm, his expression unreadable, because there was one truth knew for certain. Some secrets should never be uncovered, and some warnings should always be heeded, even when they came from the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The council chambers erupted in a chaotic wave of murmurs and debates, the voices of dozens of species rising in frustration. Karan remained still, letting the noise wash over him. He had expected this reaction. The Galactic Council had spent centuries expanding, learning, and cataloging every corner of known universe. The idea that a species, a younger species no less, could block them from further exploration was an insult to their collective authority. A voice cut through the noise. "Ambassador Karan." He turned his head toward the source. "High Chancellor Ver of the Caver Dominion." A towering figure of scaled green skin and piercing golden eye stood fro. "No, they won't listen to the warning, I know." They walked in silence for a while, their footsteps echoing in the grand halls of the station. Outside the great windows, the vastness of space stretched endlessly, filled with the lights of arriving and departing ships. Karan wondered how many of them would make it back once they crossed the wrong border. Velik hesitated before speaking Gaian. "What exactly did you see on Earth?" Karan stopped walking. His mind flashed back to the moment in that underground chamber. The whisper, the suffocating presence, the way reality itself seemed to bend around. Whatever it was that the humans had hidden, how could he put it into words? He turned to Velik, his expression grim. "I saw something I understand," he paused. "And I don't want to understand it. For the first time, Vale looked at Duniacy. That bad? Corin exhaled slowly. Worse. They resumed walking, but Corin could tell his second-in-command was Haken. Good. Little fear was better than reckless curiosity. When they reached their ship, Corin wasted no time preparing for departure. He didn't want to linger on the station. He had done what he could. Now he could only wait. As the ship disengaged from the station and set a course for neutral space, Corin allowed himself a brief moment of relief. He had delivered the warning. The rest was out of his hands, or so he thought. 3 weeks later, the distress call came. Corin was in his quarters when the alert flashed across his screen. His heart pounded as he read the report. A Kever scouting vessel had gone missing in human space. More reports followed in quick succession. Ships sent to investigate had also vanished. No wreckage, no distress beacons, no survivors, just silence. The council was in chaos. The Kever Dominion was demanding answers. The humans gave none. They simply repeated the same message. Do not come here. Do not send more ships. We will not help you. Corin felt a deep chill settle in his bones. This was it. The thing he had feared. Someone had ignored the warning. And now something was awake. The council convened an emergency session. Tensions were high. The representatives divided. Some demanded retaliation against humanity for their refusal to cooperate. Others urged caution, fearing an unseen threat. High Chancellor Vera was livid. We have lost our people, he roared, slamming a clawed fist onto the table. And the humans refused to answer for it. Corin sat silently, listening. His mind was racing, piecing things together. He knew deep down that the humans weren't responsible for the missing ships. Something else had taken them. A deep dread filled him as he recalled Helena Graves' words. We won't stop them, but we won't be responsible for what happens next. This was exactly what she had meant. Corin stood. Chancellor, he said, addressing Ver, you believe humanity is withholding information. That may be true, but I urge you to consider. What if this isn't their doing? Ver's eyes burned with anger. Then who else could be responsible? Corin hesitated, choosing his words carefully. You assume we are the only ones looking? He let the implication settle. What if something was looking back? The chamber fell into an uneasy silence. The thought was too terrible to consider. Varric sneered. If there is a threat, we must uncover it. We cannot let humanity dictate the limits of our knowledge. Corin clenched his fists. This was exactly the kind of thinking that would doom them all. But before he could argue further, the emergency alarms blared. A new transmission had arrived from the missing Kever vessel, and what it contained was worse than anything Corin could have imagined. The chamber fell into a stunned silence as the emergency transmitter played across the central hollow screen. The image was grainy, flickering with static, but the voice that came through was unmistakably Kvar. This is Scout Vessel Vorage. Where we are lost. The voice was trembling. Corin had never heard a Kever sound afraid before. They were a warrior. Species bred for battle. Their culture built on strength and dominance. But this was terror. They are here. The voice continued, barely a whisper now. Not human, not the man. They are watching. We were wrong. We were a sudden burst of static cut off the vils. Then something else came through. Not a scream, not a cry for help, a sound, a low, distorted whisper layered over itself 1,000 times, as if a chorus of unseen mouths were speaking in unison. It wasn't in any known language. It was something deeper, something primal, and every single person in the chamber felt it. Some clutched at their chests as if the sound alone was pressing against their lungs. Others shuddered as a deep, cold dread crawled down their spines. Then suddenly, silence. The transmission cut out. The chamber remained frozen in horror. Noon spoke. No one moved until Vera stood. Where did that signal come from? His voice was sharp, but there was an edge to it, something he was trying to suppress. A technician hesitated before responding. It had originated from the far edge of human space. Ver's jaw tightened. Then we send a fleet. Corin's stomach dropped. You can't, Pizarius. Very turned to him, eyes burning. We have lost ships. We have lost people. You expect us to sit idly by while that thing in the transmission, Corin interrupted. Was not Kever, it was not human, it was something else. Ver scoffed. And what do you suggest? That we leave our missing to whatever horror lurks out there. Corin's mind raced. There had to be another way. Send a diplomatic envoy. Speak with the humans. They know what's out there. Ifu push into their space without understanding. Varric slammed a fist onto the table. Understanding is for cowards. Action is what we need now. Corin clenched his fists. If you send ships into human space, you won't just be dealing with the humans, his voice lowered. You'll be dealing with whatever they are hiding from. For the first time, Ver hesitated, not because he was convinced, but because the fear in the room was palpable. The transmission had shaken the council. They all felt something unnatural in that whisper, something beyond their comprehension. But warriors like Vera did not yield to fear. They fought against it. And Kuran knew deep down that no argument would stop him. Now Vera turned away. We mobilize a fleet. The fleet arrived at the edge of human space 2 standard weeks later. Corin had not been invited. He had not been consulted. He had only received a brief cold message from Ver. Stay out of the way. And so headed. He stayed in his own vessel, stationed at a distance, monitoring the situation from afar, watching, waiting. At first, nothing happened. The Caver fleet sent out long-range scans. They found nothing. No wreckage, no human defenses mobilizing, just empty space. And then the whispers began. Not over comms, not over any known frequency inside their minds. It started as an itch in the back of their thoughts, a quiet presence, a feeling of being observed. Then the voices grew louder. One by one, crew members began reporting hearing something. A whisper just beyond the edge of comprehension. And then the shadows came. They weren't ships. They weren't life forms. They weren't anything the car had words for. They were just there watching, waiting. One Caver vessel opened fire, and that was when the screaming began. It didn't come from comms. It came from the ships themselves. Metal. Twisted, hulls bent, as if unseen hands were crushing them from the inside out. Some ships tried to escape, only to vanish mid-flight, winking out of existence without a trace. The flagship tried to transmit a distress signal. The last words the fleet sent back to the council were, "We were wrong." Then silence. The entire fleet was gone, not destroyed, not obliterated in battle. Simply erased as if they had never been there at all. 3 days later, Corin sat alone in his quarters, staring blankly at the void outside his viewport. He had known this will happen. He had tried to stop it, and yet even he had not expected the sheer unfathomable finality of it. The Caver Dominion was in chaos. The council was shaken to its core. Even Varric, the arrogant, unshakable warrior, had disappeared, lost to whatever force had claimed his fleet. Humanity remained silent. No threats, no warnings, no reaction at all. As if this outcome had been inevitable. As if this was not the first time it had happened. A private message appeared on Corin's screen. From an anonymous sender, a single line of text. "We told you not to look." Corin closed his eyes. Somewhere out in the darkness, something was awake now, and it knew they had seen it. The messages sat on Corin's screen, its meaning sinking deep into his thoughts like a stone in a vast black ocean. "We told you not to look." Not a threat, not a warning, just a statement of fact. His hands clenched into fists. The Caver fleet was gone. Not destroyed, not crippled, just erased. As if they had never existed in the first place. And humanity, they didn't celebrate. They didn't retaliate. They simply watched, unbothered, as if this had all played out before. Corin exhaled slowly. He had one choice to know, one chance to do what no one else had the sense to do. He had to talk to humans. The journey to Earth was uneventful. No human ships intercepted him. No warnings blared through his comms. But that was what unsettled him most. They knew he was coming, and they weren't stopping him. That meant one of two things. Either they didn't see him as a threat, or they didn't see anyone as a threat anymore. The surface of Earth was as unassuming as ever. Bright blue oceans, vast continents teeming with life, cities stretching into the sky, filled with technology that was dangerously behind what some other species had developed. Yet here, humanity wasn't touched, unchallenged, unafraid. Helena Graves was waiting for him. She stood on a quiet observation deck overlooking the sprawling city, hands folded behind her. Back, a faint smirk on her face. "I was wondering when you'd